Hello everybody, my name is Mel and welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a new video for you guys. We're always seeing, or at least I'm always seeing, 5-star predictions everywhere. Everybody wants to talk about the books that they think they're gonna love. And I just did one not too long ago. It's always exciting to pull out books that you really think you're going to love and to get re-excited with reading those books. However, there are those books that I personally will buy thinking I should enjoy this. I should really love it, or I've read reviews from other people and maybe I bought it thinking I would love it, but some of the people I trust are not liking it as much, or maybe some of the people that I know are loving it, but it's just something that I know is not going to be my cup of tea. So there are always those books out there that I'm predicting for one reason or another that I'm just not going to jive with. They're probably going to be that kind of middle of the road 3 stars, and I'm just not gonna love as much as I wanted to. So today I've got a stack of 10 books here off of my just physical TBR that while I really want to love them, and I hope that I'm wrong, I'm worried that I'm going to give them roughly a 3-star rating. So again, maybe not, but I'm concerned. So I've got these kind of actually portioned out in some semblance of order. So let's start with the sci-fi because it is the closest to me. The first sci-fi that I'm concerned I'm not going to love as much as I had hoped is Revelation Space by Alistair Reynolds. This is a very popular older sci-fi. When was it originally written? Oh, 2000. So it is older. It's 22 years old, and this is an epic space opera story. Pretty standard space opera story. I think it is following this universe where one of the planets was destroyed, and now we're trying to figure out why one of these planets was destroyed, and come to find out it might have been for its own good. I started this very briefly on audio. When I say briefly, I mean like 2 or 3 pages, but it was enough for me to recognize that it does have that pretty classic older writing style that's formal and extremely detailed hard sci-fi. So while I do like hard sci-fi, I am concerned that the writing style in this one is going to make a really great plot and really interesting book tick down a little for me and not be one of my favorites. And the next one I'm going to talk about I don't actually own, but I'll hold up the first one, and that is Seasonal Fears by Shauna McGuire. I did really like Middle Game, and I gave it 4 stars, but it ended for me. This was concluded. This did not need to continue. And while I enjoyed it, the more I think about it, the more that I'm just worried this book or this style of kind of quirkiness is not going to be for me and my changing taste. But I do want to read Seasonal Fears, if for no other reason than I just want to know, how did she make a sequel off of this? Because this book was, in my opinion, very well wrapped up. So I'm concerned that I'm going to find Seasonal Fears good, but completely unnecessary. Next, let's talk about some thrillers that I'm concerned I'm not going to like as much as I had originally hoped. The next one is Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. I have actually not read any of Shay Earnshaw's books. I know that she is a YA author that has written her first adult thriller horror. This one follows a man called Travis that is really good at finding people, but when he goes looking for a missing person, he turns up missing himself. I think there is a cult aspect to this book, which is usually a buzzword for me. I find cults very interesting. I won't say enjoyable, but I do find them extremely interesting. So this book hit a lot of those buzzwords for me, but I have seen some not so great reviews from people that I do tend to have similar reading taste to. But not only that, I have started to recognize that when an author goes from YA to adult, that bridge is very difficult for them, and you do keep a lot of the same things that make things feel YA to me, like writing dialogue and the pacing and the intricate details in which are given, some of the repetitiveness and hand-holding that you will sometimes see in YA. And again, there's nothing wrong with YA, but that particular style of writing, that particular tone is just not something that I personally gravitate toward anymore. And this is going to come up again a couple of times later. But I think that that may be why this book is not going to get as high a rating as I had originally hoped it would. Next up is one that I have really high hopes for, but there's just a gut feeling that tells me that it may not be the book for me, and that's The Nesting by CJ Tudor. I read Lighthouse Witches and really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Was it great? No, but I had a good time. It was a high 3-star, low 4-star read for me. This one is about, I believe a nanny, a woman that takes a job as a nanny after their mother throws themselves off a cliff, if I'm not mistaken, and they're trying to figure out why she did that. It's a very gothic type read, and in theory, I love gothic stuff. The atmosphere just sounds like it would be something I would love, but I've found that gothic inspired stories I just for some reason don't like, and so I'm concerned that this one is going to be a very slow atmospheric read rather than the mysterious, heart-pounding, sinister read that I'm hoping for. But we'll see. And lastly, we have Last Days by Adam Novell. This is one that I actually did start and I took the bookmark out of it, 30 or 40 pages into, and I was enjoying it. I think it's going to be very creepy, but I also think it's going to be extremely slow and way too long. And that is where I think the lower middle of the road rating is going to come from, is that horror novels tend to lose me when they start to be over 350, 400 pages. And I think this one is well over 500 pages, which in a heart-pounding, keep you on the edge of your seat, creepy horror tends to drag things out to the point where I'm not creeped out anymore, which defeats the purpose. But this one is also about cults, and it's a documentary about this cult that was disbanded many years ago, but there might be something else that happened, a more supernatural thing that happened in this cult and was the reason that they disbanded. So this group is going to go out and do a documentary. Then we have a couple of young adult, and the reasoning behind both of these is going to be pretty similar. The first one is All of Us Villains by Amanda Foody and Christine Lynn Herman. This is a magical story involving a tournament and 7 different families, I think, that are all fighting for one thing. Becca in the books recently, well, I say recently, a couple months ago, read this book, and she liked it pretty well. I don't think it was one of her favorites, but I want to say she may have given it 4 stars, and a lot of times in this kind of style, we tend to agree, so I have high hopes for it, but the fact that it's young adult and I'm leaning away from that does really concern me that I'm not going to quite like it as much as she did, but I'm hopeful. The story sounds really interesting, and again, this is one of those that I should love, but I'm concerned about in actuality, if I will. And then we have one that's been sitting on my shelves for 900 years that everyone loves and knows what it's about, and that's An Ember in the Ashes by Sahaba Tahir. Again, this is probably going to be one of those that if I had read it 5 years ago, I would have absolutely loved it. I would have thought that it was this unique, awesome fantasy. But now that I have read a lot more intricate adult high fantasy novels, I'm concerned that the pacing and the drama in this one is just not going to do it for me, and I'm not going to give it as high of a rating as I would have if I had read it when I was the target audience. Last but not least, I want to go over 3 fantasy novels. The first one is Among Thieves by M.J. Kuhn. I don't know if this one's young adult or not, to be completely honest with you. It is an assassin spy, I believe, story about a girl that is on the run, and she's trying to stay a step ahead of the guildmaster, but now her path is leading her back into the guildmaster's fold, but it's not a path that she can do by herself. So it does sound kind of standard, but at the same time, I am interested in this. It's a heist story, I believe, which again is a major buzzword for me. But people that I have heard and trust that have read this book they found it lackluster. And so now I'm concerned that I will find it lackluster as well. Next up, we have Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This is one that I've had on my TBR for forever and have really, really, really wanted to read. Some people that I trust and have similar-ish taste to, I won't say identical taste, but similar-ish taste, like Bobby from Bobby Reads, have loved this book. They say it's really, really fast-paced, it's super funny, it's got good relationships, so theoretically I should love it. It's about a group of old mercenaries that have to get the band back together and go on this quest. But I've also heard it compared to books like Traitor's Blade and The Black Hawks, and I'm concerned that the humor in this, that is what is so strong for most people and what drives a lot of people to loving this book, is going to be one of the reasons that I don't love it quite as much. I don't mind witty humor in my books, but I don't want the whole book to hang in the balance of the humor. It needs to be able to stand on its own, and even if it were the super dark, depressing book with no satire, it would still be a good book because the plot is there. But I find that a lot of books that tend to lean really heavily into the humor, that is mostly what they have going for them, and it's just not the book for me. And I think that that's going to be the same reason that I may or may not love The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. I know that I did a rating books based off of the first sentence and thought that I was going to love this one. But the more I think about it and the more I hear about the book in its entirety, not just based on the first sentence, I am a little concerned. I've heard it's pretty humorous and it's a little strange. It is about a guy that he owns the Takers Guild and he has earned a small fortune as a thief, but when he has to, I think he picks the wrong mark, and then he has to team up with a knight who absolutely hates him and thinks that stealing things is just beneath everyone and he cannot understand why anybody would want to make their living that way. They have to team up together and face some common enemies and uncommon dangers. And it says it's a journey where goblins hunger for human flesh, krakens hunt dark waters, and honor is a luxury few can afford. It sounds good. It sounds really good. But I'm concerned that it's going to lean too hard into the humor and the dry, I don't know, sarcastic sniping and just not be the book for me. But I'm hoping I'll be pleasantly surprised. So that's the case for a lot of these books. Is I theoretically should love the book just on paper. It is a book that I would really, really like on paper, just looking at the back of the book and knowing what I know. But also, knowing what I know, a lot of these have been read and reviewed by people that I trust, and there are certain aspects to them, like the humor or the young adult classification, that I know I'm kind of leaning away from, which concerns me that maybe I'm not going to love them as much as I thought. So if you see these books just kind of sitting on my shelves and I'm not reading them, you know why. If you've loved these and you're like, no, what you said was completely false, you're going to love it for X, Y, and Z reasons, please tell me, because I really want to get excited about a lot of these books again. I own them for a reason, because I was excited to read them, and I hate that feeling of kind of looking at it and going, I just don't know that I'm going to love it, and I don't want to pick up a book I don't think I'm going to just absolutely love. So reawaken my excitement below, or if it's one of those that you're like, nah girl, you're gonna hate that book, it just needs to get yeeted out of the house, go ahead and tell me, so I don't even try, and I'll just go ahead and get rid of them and be done with it. But anyway, also let me know down in the comments some books that you theoretically should love, but you're either thinking you're not going to, or you didn't love, and maybe I'll do a follow-up video to this sometime in the future where I go through books that I have actually read and theoretically would have loved, and books that I theoretically should have hated but actually loved. I think that would be a cool follow-up. So I think that's everything. I have rambled enough. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a good thumbs up and subscribe if you wanna, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!